Welcome to the Conditional Release Program's Overflow podcast, recorded for our dear patrons only. This is the episode that was like sneaking into an R-rated movie back when you were a kid, and you, dear patron, can tell all your friends about it because they won't be able to hear it.
Yes.
We always have a surplus of stories because there is always a surplus of dickheads, cookers, and clout-chasing turds, and it is especially so at this stage of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about stories today that aren't intrinsically interesting or not worth your time or ours. It's just that there's so damn much of it. We can't find the time to cover it in our weekly show, and we simply refuse to allow it to run like a Joe Rogan pod over 3 dreary hours.
3 hours is bloody small for him. He does like 5.
So much that we have that we would love to keep just for you people, and this is what we're doing.
Absolutely. Joe Rogan's a piece of shit, but he has 11.7 million listeners. And
well, we have almost as many as that if we use the Clive Palmer approach to mathematics.
The Monica Smith formula. It works. Fuck it. We have 11 billion.
Yeah.
We have 100 trillion listeners in gold bullion. But, of course, there are other podcasts besides the Conditional Release Program, and whatever Joe Rogan calls his, I genuinely don't fucking care.
I did not know that. I thought it was just us two.
I actually think that we should take a Stalinistic approach to this and just walk around and just shoot other podcasters and suddenly become number one. How'd that happen?
Yeah,
it must be our talent.
It's a bold move. It'll involve quite a lot of murder.
Yeah.
Millions,
Look,
really.
After the first few, it really does become quite normal.
You just blank out.
Yeah,
you just
that's
blank
it.
out.
Yeah. You got to get.
Yeah, you always remember your first one, but number 5, who don't even remember who it was.
Yeah.
Look, there is another podcast, and it's called Rogues Bogues.
Isn't it Bogues Rogues?
Rogues Bogues.
I don't
Bogues,
know.
Rogues. It's really hard to remember,
shit.
but I think it is Rogue Bogues.
I think it's just shit.
Yeah, and look, it's from a guy who used to dribble a ball for large amounts of money and now dribbles shit for free.
Ugh.
Andrew Bogut.
What a cunt.
As in Bogues. And Bogues got into a spot of hot water when he released a video ranting about lockdowns and urging Victorians to vote out 3 crossbenchers in the upper house, who, generally speaking, have supported the Andrews government. Take it away, Joel.
Yes. Well, so Andrew Bogut's a real piece of shit. He basically started whinging about the fact that he got a letter, like a formal notice. I think it was a letter from the VEC, the Victorian Electoral Commission, I guess that is.
Yes, that's what it is.
That he had failed to comply with the requirements for the publication of electoral advertisements, handbills, pamphlets, or notices. So they copied the legislation and basically put the act, and said, mate, you've got to authorise your posts. If you
look, and that's why what they're talking about here is these tedious electoral written and read by,
yes.
and showing someone who's actually provided permission. Look, I'll go to bat for Bogues just early on, because what he was really suggesting, vote these 3 characters out of the upper house at the next Victorian election, is kind of what you see on Twitter all the time. I mean, vote out Scott Morrison, vote out Anthony Albanese, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I reckon he's got a bit of a legitimate complaint there when he received the letter. But it was just a letter that said you may be subject to, as an individual, a fine of, I think, about $1,100.
He was posting content, though. So it's not the same sort of thing as posting a link to an article or something like that. And it's not the same thing as having some sort of opinion on Twitter. He was posting some kind of content from an organization, and that, but I agree to a certain extent. And so basically, Bogues, who is just an insufferable cock, he said this: well, VEC, here's your reply. I don't agree with your sentiment. I don't agree with the offences you have stated in your very own act. But it basically says social media posts are not listed. The clip does not promote a political party. I believe it's fully within the act because he's a fucking lawyer all of a sudden. Within the law, I'm very careful at not promoting political parties. I don't endorse any party. I'm not silly enough to go out there and promote one single party because at the end of the day, most of them will let you down eventually. So it's just a libertarian.
He's one of those none of the above guys. You know, it's the easiest position to take him.
A political fucking coward.
Yeah.
Just a fucking coward.
I hate them both equally.
Of course, you end up voting at the end of the day, and your preference goes somewhere. You spineless shithead, but you won't say it publicly because if you're wrong, people will laugh at you, and you're a narcissist who can't take fucking criticism. But the thing is, all right.
Yeah,
so,
look, so we kind of disagree about Bogues, about the content that he's provided. We sort of disagree. I think he's entitled to say it without endorsement, without having to go through this sort of tedious
He's got a platform. He's got how many followers? Too many to be able to be sitting there saying, oh, I didn't realise. Tens of thousands of followers brings a certain level of responsibility. Now, sure, I would say that PR guy probably should get a few letters themselves, but at the same time, like...
It's a good example.
If you're a mouthpiece on Twitter... Don't be a bitch about it. You get a fucking letter like this and you don't fucking whinge about it and say, I disagree with your stance. What you do is you say, hey, I'm on the radar. The VEC thinks I'm a political commentator. What's that? Like, I'm a political party. Like, it's just that whinginess.
Look, it probably does get to that whole topic of, political operatives running anonymous Twitter accounts and so forth there and publishing what is obviously propaganda, party propaganda.
Yeah. It happens.
Bogart's not doing that per se, but you mentioned PR guy and you say, well, really, you should have underneath every tweet, written and endorsed by the Australian Labor Party.
Which, of course, would really fuck with their bloody character count, wouldn't it? That'd be really... It should be like a second tweet. And the thing is...
I guarantee, just for people who don't know, I guarantee you that both political parties will have small armies of people who are engaging online on behalf of their parties on any given day.
And that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is, for those who aren't Twitter dorks, because we all think that everyone lives on Twitter until we walk out of our little echo chamber. PR guy is just an account. It's anonymous. We don't know if it's a woman or a man. We don't know if it's old or young. May have worked for Dan Andrews, who knows, but a massive Labor shill who likes to stir shit and basically posts a lot of inflammatory stuff, some of it fairly contestable, like some of it quite questionable, but has a lot of reach and has a lot of influence. Started really loving Lucky Lance. Gave Lance a bump on Twitter, and now he has 4,000 followers. I think he had about 400 before the PR guy push. So basically, if PR guy endorses you, it's like Oprah Winfrey putting you on the Oprah show. But the thing is, all right. So like all this,
so that's where these electoral laws are incredibly rubbery. But the first thing to note is the Victorian Electoral Commission is not a wing of government, not a part of government at all. It stands independent of government and acts on complaints and acts where it believes there have been breaches of the Act.
And they've been quite vigilant recently. They've been popping up.
And this is where Bogues has gone nuts, right?
The guy's back up whinging and saying he's on a list. It's absolutely pathetic because what he's trying to say is that he's being silenced. And this is how it's been reported in the media. News.com.au ran a story on it. And basically, the whole gist behind it is that Bogues is flying too close to the sun, and the Victorian Electoral Commission, in cahoots with Dan Andrews and Brett Sutton and fucking who else, is trying to shut him down. And he had this thing saying basically, here's the quote from this whingy bitch. Victoria's a democracy, right? Where did this come from? Did it come from the government I criticise almost on a daily basis? I mean, get another hobby, but yeah, fair enough. Surely not, because the VEC are non-partisan, aren't they? Oh, you're so close to it. They're there to protect the integrity of our democracy and our voting system, right? Oh my God, you actually got it. It's just the weird inflection that's really problematic here. And when it comes down to it, he's saying, I endorse no political party in Victoria. That's cool. But what you're saying is to vote out one which kind of endorses the other. So that's a really cowardly, fucking spineless way of saying, I'm kind of endorsing the Liberals, but I'm kind of not.
Before, it's the ultimate act of cowardice. I do not support any political party. I just hate one or two that I pick on all the time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, it's any kind of talking head would say the same sort of shit, especially on the right. Sorry, it just really is. But then he says, if saying that is against the rules, then send me another letter with your open-ended jargon. Like, it wasn't complex. It was just saying you got to authorize politically sensitive posts, you fucking lunatic. Like, yeah, it is against the rules. It's just a law. And yeah, okay, they're being a bit fickle. But, like, the thing that really shits me is this victim mentality that's coming from the right, where lefties are snowflakes, but they're constant victims. Like, I just don't even get the way this works.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
We're bedwetters, but they're constantly pissing in their pants at the playground, crying about being
the other thing
victimized.
I really don't like about it is that there's this insinuation that, the hand of Dan Andrews is involved in this. Lists are being created.
He must be so busy.
Kind of nonsense.
That's the thing. He reckons he's on a list.